The black Mercedes-Benz pulled to a sharp stop as Adunni Okafor watched through her tinted windows. A young woman sat in the pouring Lagos rain, clutching 3 crying babies to her chest, begging strangers who walked past without a second glance. But it wasn't the heartbreaking sight that made the billionaire businesswoman freeze. It was the woman's face. Adunni's hands trembled as she recognized those familiar features, the same nose, the same stubborn chin. This girl begging in the rain with triplets looked exactly like her late daughter Kimi, who had died 5 years ago. If you think you know where this story is going, think again. What Adunni discovered about this mysterious girl will shock you to your core. The driver honked impatiently, but Adunni couldn't move. She watched as the girl tried to shield the babies from the rain with a torn piece of cardboard, her own clothes soaked through. The sight tore at Adunni's heart in ways she hadn't felt since losing Kimi. Without thinking, she opened her car door and stepped into the storm. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice barely audible over the thunder. The girl looked up, and Adunni gasped. Those were Kimi's eyes staring back at her, the same warm brown eyes that used to light up when she smiled. The girl scrambled to her feet, holding the babies closer. "Please, Ma, I'm not causing trouble. I just need help feeding my children." Her voice carried the same melodic tone that Kimi had inherited from their family. Adunni's mind raced with impossible possibilities. This couldn't be real. Kimi had died in a car accident. She had buried her daughter herself. But standing before her was someone who could have been Kimi's twin. The babies continued crying, their tiny voices mixing with the sound of rain hitting concrete. Adunni noticed something else that made her blood run cold, a small birthmark on the girl's wrist, identical to one Kimi had carried. "What's your name?" Adunni whispered, stepping closer despite the rain drenching her expensive suit. The girl hesitated, her eyes darting nervously. "Folake, Ma. Folake. But Adunni caught the slight pause, the way the girl's voice wavered when she said it. Something was wrong, very wrong. Before she could ask another question, a man appeared from the shadows, roughly grabbing Folake's arm. "Time to go," he growled, eyeing Adunni's expensive car with suspicion. As he dragged Folake and the crying triplets away into the crowded Lagos street, the girl looked back one last time. And in that moment, Adunni saw something that made her heart stop. Fear, recognition, and what looked like a desperate plea for help. Will Adunni discover the shocking truth about this mysterious girl? And why does she look exactly like a dead daughter? Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will leave you speechless. 3 hours later, Adunni sat in her luxury penthouse office, unable to concentrate on anything except those familiar eyes. She had built a telecommunications empire from nothing, survived betrayals, hostile takeovers, and personal tragedies, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The image of Folake and those 3 babies haunted her thoughts. She picked up a phone and dialed her private investigator, Marcus Ease. "I need you to find someone," she said without preamble. A young woman, early 20s, 3 babies, goes by Folake. She was begging near Victoria Island this afternoon. Marcus, who had worked for her family for over a decade, knew better than to ask questions when Adunni's voice carried that particular edge. As she waited for Marcus to call back, Adunni found herself staring at the framed photo of Kimi on her desk. Her daughter had been her pride and joy, the heir to her business empire, until that terrible night 5 years ago. The police report said Kimi's car had plunged into Lagos Lagoon during a storm, but her body was never recovered. Adunni had spent millions searching, hired the best divers, offered rewards, but eventually accepted that the currents had claimed her daughter forever. Now, seeing Folake had reopened wounds she thought had healed. The resemblance was impossible to ignore, but more disturbing were the small details, the way she held her head, the nervous habit of biting her lower lip, even the way she cradled those babies. Her phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. "I found something disturbing." Marcus's voice was tense. "The woman you described, she's living in Makako slum with a man named Tunde Bakare. But here's the strange part. There's no record of a Folake anywhere in Nigeria's database. It's like she doesn't exist." Adunni's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean she doesn't exist?" Marcus continued. "No birth certificate, no school records, no hospital visits for those babies. Someone has gone to great lengths to erase her identity. And There's something else. Tunde Bakir has connections to human trafficking rings. He's been suspected but never convicted. The revelation hit Adunni like a physical blow. Human trafficking. The pieces were starting to form a horrifying picture. I need you to keep watching them, but don't approach yet, she instructed, her mind already working through possibilities. And Marcus, run a DNA comparison with Kimi's medical records. I know it sounds impossible, but... She couldn't finish the sentence. As she hung up, lightning illuminated the Lagos skyline through her floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there in the slums, a girl who looked exactly like her dead daughter was living in conditions that made Adunni's heart break. But if Folake wasn't who she claimed to be, then who was she? And why did someone want her identity erased? The triplets' cries echoed in her memory as a terrifying new possibility began to take shape in her mind. The truth about Folake's identity is more shocking than you can imagine. But when Adunni uncovers a connection to human trafficking, she realizes this is just the beginning. Don't miss what happens next. Like this video and ring that notification bell. The next morning, Adunni couldn't wait for Marcus's official report. She disguised herself in simple clothes and a head wrap, then drove to Makako's slum in an unmarked car. The floating community built on stilts over Lagos Lagoon was a world away from her penthouse, but Adunni had grown up in similar conditions before building her fortune. She knew how to blend in. Following Marcus's directions, she found the ramshackle wooden house where Folake was staying. Through a gap in the wooden walls, she could see the young woman feeding the triplets with what looked like watered-down formula. The babies were thin, their cries weak from hunger, and Folake herself looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Adunni's heart shattered watching the scene. She was about to approach when she heard heavy footsteps on the wooden walkway. Tunde Bakir appeared, and Adunni quickly behind a nearby shack. "You brought in nothing yesterday." Tunde's voice was filled with rage as he grabbed Folake by the hair. "These babies are costing me money, and you're useless." Folake winced but didn't cry out, protecting the triplets with her body. "Please, Tunde, the babies were sick. I couldn't leave them long enough to beg properly." Her submission seemed practiced, as if this wasn't the first time. Tunde backhanded her across the face, and Adunni had to bite her own hand to keep from screaming. "You have 1 week to prove your worth, or I'm selling you and those brats to my contacts in Benin City. They pay good money for young mothers." The threat of being sold chilled Adunni to her core. She watched as Tunde stormed off, leaving Folake to comfort the crying babies with shaking hands. When Adunni was sure he was gone, she approached the house. "Folake," she called softly. The girl looked up, her face showing fresh bruises, but her eyes widened in recognition. You're the woman from yesterday, the rich lady." Adunni nodded, stepping closer. "I want to help you. Those babies need proper food and medical attention." But instead of gratitude, she saw fear flash across Folake's face. "You need to leave," Folake whispered urgently. "If Tunde sees you here, he'll hurt all of us. He has connections, police, politicians. He's untouchable." But Adunni had built her empire by refusing to back down from dangerous men. "Tell me the truth, Folake. What's your real name?" The question seemed to hit like a physical blow. Folake's composure cracked, and tears started flowing. I can't. He said he'd kill the babies if I ever told anyone." The desperation in her voice was real, but so was something else, a flicker of hope, as if she wanted to be saved but was too terrified to ask. As Adunni reached out to comfort her, footsteps approached again. "He's coming back," Folake whispered in terror. "Hide!" But it was too late. Tunde appeared at the doorway, his eyes immediately focusing on Adunni with suspicion. "Who is this woman?" he demanded, his hand moving to something concealed in his jacket. The air grew thick with danger as Adunni realized she might have just walked into a trap that could get them all killed. Just when Adunni thought she could save Folake, she's face to face with a dangerous trafficker. What will happen when he discovers who she really is? The next chapter will blow your mind. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. "I'm just a concerned citizen trying to help," Adunni said calmly, though her heart pounded as Tunde's hand remained near his weapon. But her expensive watch and the confidence in her voice immediately raised his suspicions. "Concerned citizens don't come to Makako wearing 100,000 naira shoes," Tunde sneered, stepping closer. Adunni cursed herself for not being more careful with her disguise. Folake remained silent, clutching the babies, but Adunni could see the terror in her eyes. Tunde circled him like a predator, his mind clearly working through possibilities. You know what I think? I think you're either police or someone very rich who's taken an interest in my property. The way he said property, while looking at Folake, made Adunni's blood boil. How much? Adunni asked suddenly, deciding to play the role he'd assigned her. How much for the girl and the babies? Tunde's eyes lit up with greed, but Folake gasped in horror. You want to buy them? Well, a rich woman with expensive tastes. He quoted an outrageous price, testing her. Without hesitation, Adunni agreed, pulling out her phone to make a bank transfer. But I want to inspect my purchase first, she added, moving toward Folake. As she pretended to examine the babies, she whispered quickly, Trust me, when I give the signal, run to the main road. Folake's eyes showed understanding, but also disbelief that someone would pay so much for strangers. The transaction completed, Tunde became almost friendly, clearly counting his windfall. Pleasure doing business. They are yours now. But as Adunni prepared to leave with Folake and the triplets, her phone rang. It was Marcus, and his voice was urgent. You need to get out of there now. Tunde Bakir isn't just a trafficker. He's wanted for murder. And I have news about the DNA test that will shock you. Adunni tried to keep her expression neutral, but Tunde noticed a change immediately. His friendly demeanor vanished as he stepped closer, blocking their exit. Who was that? He demanded. And why do you look like someone who just heard bad news? Before Adunni could answer, Marcus continued speaking loudly through the phone. The DNA results came back. Folake is definitely related to your family, but she's not who you think she is. The words carried clearly in the small space, and Tunde's face transformed into something dangerous. DNA tests? Family. He grabbed Folake roughly, pressing a knife to her throat. You lying little witch. You told me you had no family, no one who would look for you. Folake began crying, and the babies started screaming. Adunni realized with growing horror that Marcus's corps had just signed all their death warrants. Please, Folake sobbed. I never lied to you. I don't know what they're talking about. But Tunde wasn't listening anymore. His eyes were focused on Adunni with the look of a man who just realized he'd been played by someone very powerful and very wealthy. The DNA results have just changed everything, but they've also put everyone in deadly danger. What shocking family connection will be revealed? And will they survive Tunde's rage? You won't believe what happens next. Hit that like button and subscribe for the explosive conclusion. The DNA shows she's not your daughter. Marcus's voice crackled through the phone as Tunde held the knife closer to Folake's throat. She's your granddaughter, Kimi's daughter, which means those babies are your great-grandchildren. The revelation hit Adunni like lightning. Her daughter hadn't died in that car accident. She'd been pregnant and had given birth before disappearing. Folake wasn't just someone who looked like Kimi. She was Kimi's child, making the triplets Adunni's legacy. The pieces fell into place with crushing clarity. Someone had faked Kimi's death and sold her pregnant daughter into trafficking. That's impossible, Adunni whispered. But even as she spoke, she knew it was true. The resemblance, the mannerisms, the birthmark, genetics didn't lie. Tunde's grip tightened on Folake as the implication sank in. So you're not just some rich woman. You're connected to her, which means she's worth much more than I thought. His greed overrode his caution as he calculated new possibilities. A billionaire's granddaughter, the ransom alone could set me up for life. But Adunni was no longer the frightened woman who'd walked into this trap. She was a billionaire who'd just discovered her family was alive, and nothing would stop her from protecting them. Let her go. Tunde. Name your price. Her voice carried a steel that made even the dangerous trafficker pause. I can transfer more money than you've ever dreamed of right now. As Tunde hesitated, torn between immediate payment and the larger ransom potential, Folake spoke for the first time since the revelation. Grandmother. Her voice was small, confused, but filled with desperate hope. My mother, she told me stories before she died, about a strong woman who built an empire. She said I had a grandmother who would love me if she ever found me. Adunni's heart broke and soared simultaneously. Kimi had told her daughter about her, which meant somewhere in this nightmare there had been love and hope. "Yes, child, I'm your grandmother, and I'm going to take you home." But Tunde laughed harshly, pressing the knife deeper. "Touching family reunion, but business is business. I'm thinking 50 million naira should." His words were cut short as armed police officers suddenly surrounded the shack. Marcus had done more than just call with DNA results. He'd brought backup. Lagos State Police dropped the weapon. The standoff lasted only seconds before Tunde realized he was outnumbered and outgunned. As the police arrested him, Adunni rushed to embrace Folake and the triplets. Through tears, she looked into her granddaughter's eyes, Kimi's eyes, and saw not just resemblance, but resilience, strength, and the family spirit that had built an empire. "You're safe now," she whispered, holding her new family close. "All of you are safe, and you're coming home where you belong." 6 months later, Folake sat in the same penthouse office where Adunni had first seen her photo, now as the heir apparent to the family business, with her 3 healthy babies playing nearby, a family reborn from the ashes of tragedy, stronger than ever before. From begging in the rain to discovering she was a billionaire's granddaughter, Folake's journey shows us that family bond can survive anything. What did you think of this incredible story? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories that will touch your heart.